All right, good morning, everybody. Welcome back for day 2 of the International Wildfire Prevention Workshop. We're so happy to see y'all, and we're so happy to have Linda join us today since we missed her yesterday. Just a quick reminder to our participants out there, if you have any questions today, just drop them in the chat, and we have some moderators that'll be looking for those questions, and we'll read those out at the end for the presenter. So to get started this morning with Miss Linda Hecker. Linda Hecker is the Fire Prevention Education Team Lead for the Rocky Mountain region and recently retired Regional Interpretive Services Conservation Education and Fire Prevention Coordinator for the USDA Forest Service Rocky Mountain region. With nearly 40 years of award-winning experiences, including the coveted Smokey Bear Gold Award for Smokey's 75th birthday, she brings passion, expertise, and commitment to each assignment. Her fire prevention education team has had the opportunity to work many assignments across the United States and develop creative solutions to various concerns and challenges over the past several years. Thank you so much for joining us this morning, Linda, and we look forward to your presentation. And now I'm going to turn it over to you.
All right. Well, thank you. So glad we get a chance to try this a second time, right? So welcome, everyone, and thanks for joining in this morning. So I was asked to talk about virtual teams and then also get into how we target our media and messages to the audience. So if you had not been familiar with teleworking or any kind of virtual work environment, well, we all got a crash course in that in 2020. And I had been working in a service center for 20 years, and that whole time we were doing virtual teams. And so it wasn't completely foreign to me, but at the same time, I definitely was a little bit intimidated the first time we did it with a fire assignment and a prevention team assignment. But after about the second day, it didn't feel so foreign after all. So my team is spread out across the country, and we were working assignments where we had 5 different time zones going on. So that got a little crazy. But, when it's all said and done, I think we learned some really good things in 2020. And I think 2020 changed the work environment for permanently. And I think we're going to see these teams that are going to have people boots on the ground and working virtually as our new norm. Some of the things that we learned with as far as benefits is the cost reduction to the home unit. We did the math, and we were looking at 30 to 40% savings on a team assignment, and that's pretty significant overall. The other thing is it really helps to provide that work-life balance for our team members. I have several team members, including myself, where we're primary caregivers. And so getting out of the door for 2 weeks and saying bye-bye is not a realistic expectation for some of us now. So the virtual opportunity allows us to tap into people who would otherwise be sidelined and who are amazing resources. So it's kind of the best of both worlds. And then the other thing that we saw is that it reduces exposure. And it's not just exposure to COVID, but one of the leading causes of injury and death is driving. And on the Plumas assignment earlier this year, our team put on 10,000 miles on windy mountain roads. And it was pretty intense. There were some scary moments there. And by being able to work remote and things like that, you just reduce those risks and hazards. And that's a good thing for your team. Some of the cons that we experienced were it's very difficult for a brand new trainee to learn from their peers. Last year I had a gal, seasoned public affairs officer for her unit, very well respected, but she'd never done a prevention team assignment, very first time, and the virtual world just didn't work for her. It helps to have that mentor, to be able to shadow that mentor and learn directly from them. And the virtual environment just doesn't allow for that. Now, a trainee who has gone out before and has some experience, I think the virtual environment would be fine for them. But that brand new trainee, first time out the gate, yeah, not a good fit. Things that we got to keep in mind too is things get lost in translation. You know, even when you're sitting in the same room, things can get lost in translation. But you know, when you're several thousand miles apart in different rooms, it's a little easier for things to get lost in transition. And so there's that need to be cognizant of that and to really make the effort to follow through with whoever you're working with directly to make sure that you're thinking the same thing. And then the other thing that we found to be difficult is building those relationships with employees on the host unit. It can be more difficult, especially if those particular employees aren't too keen about the team being there. You know, the fire management officer said, hey, we're going to bring in a team, and some of the collateral staff officers are just like, yeah, well, who are they? And, you know, so there's that uncertainty, and we're running into that a lot, you know, because staffing levels are so low, and they're like, we've never ordered a prevention team before. We don't know what you're capable of. And so they get a little protective, I guess is a good word. And so that makes it really interesting. And then the other thing too is when you're 1,000 miles away, it's easier to not acknowledge someone. So it gets a little harder sometimes to connect with some of the unit folks. But I would like to introduce you to my team. We have an amazing team that's been together in some configuration or another since December of 2017. Cindy Nolan, she is my deputy, and she's been with me since the inception. She is just an absolute rock star and fearless. This woman cut her teeth running and gunning with her local Type 3 team out there in Lakeview, Oregon. She works on the Fremont Wainema as an AD, and she's fearless. It just doesn't matter what comes at her, and she's high energy. She's, you know, 1,000 volts of electricity going through her body at any one time, and she's amazing. So she'll take on the social media. She'll do any kind of regular media. You know, when there's been a few assignments where we had to do initial attack, and so she did some running and gunning with local Type 3 teams, and yeah, she's able to pinch hit quite a bit, and she makes herself extremely valuable to the host unit and to our team. Emily, she is also an amazing individual. She works for the National Park Service in Hawaii, and she used to be in Southern California. But yeah, she likes to geek out on techie stuff, and she's a certified trainer for Google Docs, which has come in helpful more times than once, because the rest of us really don't like Google Docs, but she can just make them do whatever she wants to do and create all kinds of forms, and yeah, incredible. But you know, Emily is a military wife, and her husband goes off on deployment. And being in Hawaii, the grandparents are in the continental United States, and so she's raising the two boys, and so getting her out the door is not always a possibility. But we've been able to work with Emily remotely since 2018, and she's been great. Then Rhonda joined the team in 2018, and Rhonda is the public affairs officer for West Metro Fire, which is a fire district here in the Denver metro area. And she comes to fire via broadcast journalism. She has 22 years of broadcast journalism, still stays really plugged in with that whole network. And, you know, she can, in her words, she can take chicken poo and turn it into chicken salad like nobody else. So she's truly amazing. And, you know, it just takes us sitting down and figuring out what we want as far as a video. And then I just cut her loose and let her do her thing. And the next day I usually have a WeTransfer file in my inbox to review. And it's amazing, as always. And then the newest addition to our team is April Phillips. April started working with our team back in 2018, and I coined the term duty officer for her, and she really liked that term, so we've stuck with that. And she is our anchor point. She provides a lot of that admin support. She works for U.S. Fish and Wildlife as a AD, and she's down in the San Antonio, Texas area. And she's another one who is not mobile, but that has worked out so well for our team because, like I said, you know, when we were on the Plumas, driving those 10,000 miles, most of that was out of cell phone service. And so she was in front of her computer, had decent internet access, and was able to stay in contact with whoever we needed to stay in contact with versus the rest of us who were not available for hours at a time. And the other thing, amazing thing about April is that she's always thinking about 3 steps ahead. She's an amazing person for pulling out resources from thin air. I mean, it's pretty incredible. And then there's a document that she put together for this presentation. It's what a duty officer or what your team member who's working remote can do while the rest of the team is in travel status. So it's all about setting up the email account and your Google Drive and all of that kind of stuff. So we have really enjoyed having April as part of the team. Then there's myself, of course, and I've been a team lead since 2016, but our team again started in December of 2017, and I am retired. I retired in 2020, and I was the regional coordinator for interpretive services, conservation education, and a portion of fire prevention for the Rocky Mountain region. So it was quite a fun job. And that's, well, we are a successful team as far as I'm concerned because one, we like each other. You know, there is that really good team chemistry going on. And I think we consider ourselves all friends. And we're constantly talking to each other. Even if we're not on an assignment, we have a group text going and we're always chit-chatting. But even on an assignment, there's just this constant chatter that's happening. And, you know, a lot of times we rely heavily on the texting, and we've looked at doing different apps, but everybody kind of defaults back to just regular old text. And then when things get a little more complex, it's calls followed up with emails. But that daily coordination meeting, we did 2 of them last year, and one in the morning and one in the evening. And then we found that just one in the morning was fine. And in the evening, everybody would submit their accomplishment report to April, and she would use that to develop our accomplishment, our daily report for the following day. And then in the daily briefing, we could sit there and discuss the accomplishments and get tasks out for the day and talk about any issues that we might be facing. So that daily coordination call is a great one. And it's a lot of fun. And then midway into the assignment, usually that Sunday, it lingers a little bit longer. We have a little bit more of a coffee clutch going on and talk about, okay, how's our first week gone and how's our second week looking, and do we need to change things up a bit? And then also by then the adrenaline is kind of worn off too, and so people are starting to feel the fatigue. So it's just a really nice time to re-energize and refocus, and it's worked out very well. As soon as we get our delegate, and I talk with the FMO, I'll order up additional individuals to be part of our team in order to accomplish the objectives. But the other thing that we'll do is we'll put together a communication plan, which is really the action plan, and it identifies who's the audience, what are the messages that we need to get out to each of those audience segments, and then how do we plan to deliver that. And then that just becomes our workload for the 2-week assignment. And as we move along, we'll refine it, and you never know. There's always something that kind of happens that you weren't anticipating, and you got to take advantage of some of those fortuitous opportunities. So our first assignment was on the Mark Twain National Forest, which is headquartered in Rolla, Missouri, but the forest itself covers essentially 1/3 of the state of Missouri, that lower southern half of the state. So it's a very spread out forest. And the way I got that assignment was I was on a monthly call with the prevention folks, and they were talking about the Mark Twain wanting to order up a team, and there was no one on the schedule. And so, like a crazy person, I said, well, I'll do it. So I got the assignment, and I traveled, and I had no clue who I would end up ordering up. So I traveled on my own, and I posted it on Facebook. Well, Emily and Cindy both saw the post, and they said, hey, that sounds great. If you need help, let us know. So I called them, and that's how we got to be a team. So that was a very interesting assignment. And we had really kind of 3 segments of audiences that we were dealing with. One was the landowner, which in order to work with them, we needed to work with the state. But you know, the landowners, they need to put fire on the ground in order to burn off their fields and their ditches and things like that. And so it was really about training up the landowner to be able to put fire on the ground. The other one, we called it a recreational arsonist, of all things. But they were essentially young men, as the FMOs said. They would go to church on Sunday, get out, go buy beer, and then they would go dirt roading on the back roads. And around 3 o'clock in the afternoon, they could set their watch, and there'd be fire alarms coming in, because these guys would start torching off the roadways in the afternoon after a few beers, and they just thought it was giggles and grins and lots of fun. So that was kind of insane that someone would think that would be a good time. That was the majority of the arson, but there were a couple people, I think, on the forest that they were aware of who had more malicious intent, anti-government, and that's where the patrols really came in that we had there. They traveled the whole distance of the forest, and there's quite the little communication network. So they never knew where the patrols would be, how long they would be there. And because they didn't want to get caught, they didn't have any arson fires while we were there, because they knew that there were these patrols, but where they were, they weren't sure. So that worked out really good for us. And then the third group that we were looking at was the community relations component. So with the landowners, we came up with this whole thing called Do It Right Before You Lie, right? And it was just talking about how to get the skills and the knowledge to be able to put that fire on the ground. So the state offered a certification course, and I think it was either a minimal cost or free that they could go to. And it was just bringing awareness that this thing existed and that they could sign up for it. It was helping them understand how weather impacts fire behavior and what kind of tools they need to have with them the day of the burn and the notification process. So I think that went real well. And then here's with the recreational arsonists, what we were finding is there's a really strong patriotism in that area. And, you know, these kids, they were just out having giggles and grins, and they didn't want to hurt their neighbors. And so they had a strong connection to the community and a strong connection to the country. And so there's been previous research done with the use of the flag on signage, that if you include a flag, it receives less vandalism. And so that's why we decided to just have the silhouette of the firefighter there, is to invoke that sense of community and sense of patriotism, and hopefully it would curtail some of this fun and game stuff. And the other spin that we put on it was fire's a tool, not a toy. And we had some other images that showed a house involved with a family left homeless as a result of losing their home. So from what we understand, those were well received. And then the community engagement, the forest has a whole network of fire towers, but because of staffing, there's no one to staff it, and there's not the money to modernize these and make them automatic, you know. So with the amount of vets that were in the area and retirees, we worked with the volunteer coordinator and started working to put together a volunteer program for firefighter lookouts. There was also a job corps on the forest, and again, working with the volunteer coordinator, we did some in-reach there to see about recruiting firefighters and some other fire positions like the public information officer, and get those interns going. So these were all very successful as far as getting initiated. In 2018, our team went down to Durango to the San Juan National Forest, and we were there for 54 days. It was a long assignment. And they brought us back in 2020. The big thing with Durango was they wanted us to create that speaking with one voice with all of their partners. And so what we did, we took the Durango dispatch area map, and we just copied essentially what the Southwest region did. Southwest region uses their states, and we just used the counties and then colored the different counties. And this was how we started to brand all of the partners that were in that Southwest area. And we called it Southwest Colorado Wildfire Coalition. We also created a header that we could use on our blog. And then, of course, the blog. So the blog was this place where you could round up everyone's information. It didn't matter if you were a Fed, state, county, NGO, whatever. If you had a piece of that wildfire in Southwest Colorado, we included you in the blog. And the blog got some really good press in 2020. But unfortunately, for whatever reasons, the forest decided to delete the blog in 2021. I think it just comes down to the staffing and being able to populate it. The other thing that we created was a YouTube channel, and then we had Rhonda create a series of videos. And some of these videos have now become kind of our standardized suite of videos that we do every time we go to a new site. So we'll do a video that has to do with the fuels and the fire conditions, and we'll have either the FMO talk about it, or the fire behavior analyst or a meteorologist do that interview. The other video that we'll do is a ride along with the prevention tech, especially if they're in stage 1 or stage 2 fire restrictions, and they can talk specifically about that. And then the third one that we're doing as kind of the norm is those roadside starts. And we've been successful in getting State Patrol to actually be on camera and give that one. And that works out really well. But one of the things that we did while we were there is we created what we call mitigation minutes. And they were just about a series of about 6 videos that were about a minute each. And they just talked about little things you could do around the house on a weekend to help make your house more fireproof. And so those were very successful in communicating a lot of information. We provided a video called the 6 Ps, what to take when you have to evacuate. We did one on Code Red to get folks to sign up for that. And then there was also one that we did for stage 2 fire restrictions. And that all ended up playing really well. We had a contact with the city of Durango, and Durango, they have a subscription to Channel 1, which is a cable station. And the public affairs officer with Durango took all of our videos, uploaded them to Channel 1, and they got broadcast throughout the entire community. So they were shown on continuously at the airport, hotels, convenience stores, liquor stores, grocery stores, wherever Channel 1 was broadcasting, these were being shown, and that was very successful. Another thing that happened while we were there is the 416 fire broke out, and there was a injured cub that was recovered. And Cindy and Emily really wanted to try to do something with that. And so they tracked it down. They found where the cub was being rehabbed. And before we knew it, we made a little road trip with Smokey and did this little video. Hopefully it will play. Guess not. So anyway, we did this little video of Smokey going and visiting the injured bear cub. And it came out on the 4th of July. And Rhonda, having her contacts, she got a hold of all of her friends in the broadcast journalism business. They took the video and they ran with it, and the whole thing just went viral nationally because it was that feel-good story that they could have at the end of the broadcast. And you know, it was a busy fire season in 2018, so a lot of people in the country were breathing smoke because of that. But yeah, that video went over very well, and it shared a very strong message. The other group that we were reaching out to there were the homeless. So one of the gals on my team, we had worked together in 2016, and we'd reached out to the homeless outside in the Placerville area in California. And we decided to do the same thing in the Durango area. And what we had learned about this population is it's not a homogenized group. It's a very stratified group. So you have some folks that are higher functioning, and you have some folks that are very low functioning. And the higher functioning ones keep an eye on the lower functioning ones. And the other thing we found out is that the homeless is very concerned about wildfire, because if they have no way to escape, no way to evacuate, they're on foot and bicycles, and so they know that they're not going to outrun this thing. So they do monitor each other, and the collapsible buckets were great. So we got the collapsible buckets. We filled it with things that we thought they could use, like the carabiners and bandanas, things like that. And then we developed this, what we called a hang tag. And we provided that to them where community service groups were providing a meal. And so that went over very well and has been very effective. Then in the fall of 2019, we went down to the Francis Marion Sumter National Forest. They had a prevention team in there earlier in the year, and they asked us if we couldn't maybe grab some of those folks to be part of our team. And so we did. And it was great because then we had that continuity between the two different teams. And so we weren't stepping on the same turf, and we weren't duplicating effort. And it worked out really well. But in 2019, the conditions of the forest were the same or similar to what they were experiencing in 2016 when the Gatlinburg fire in North Carolina broke out, and or Gatlin fire, I guess that's Tennessee, sorry. And that was a very destructive fire. But in 2016, that whole area in the south was really dry. So they were very concerned in 2019, which is why they brought in the teams. And we were coming into fire season as well. There were trees that looked green, but their fuel moistures were super duper low. And so again, it was all about really raising that awareness, helping people understand what was going on. And it was a big outreach effort. Most of their fires in that area are debris burning. And it was interesting because we went ahead and we put together a video working with the State Forestry Commission. And the forester we worked with, he had his father come over and be on camera. Well, his dad came over knowing he was going to do this debris burn video, and he showed up in shorts and flip-flops. So Rhonda was like, yeah, that's not going to work. And the son was able to lend his dad a pair of pants and some tennis shoes, some enclosed shoes, so that they could do the video. And he lent him some gloves as well. So, you know, it just goes to show you that even if you're used to doing this all the time, you're trying to communicate the right messaging, sometimes we're our own worst enemies, and we have to remind ourselves of the very basics. And so that was interesting. And that video went over very well because it really highlighted that you're only supposed to burn natural plant material, not anything that's been modified, like construction material or trash. And that's a big message to try to get out in South Carolina, because there's a lot of areas in South Carolina where people choose not to have a trash disposal system, and they're burning household trash, and these debris burns that get away from them. So trying to communicate that message was an uphill challenge. The other one was the hunter safety, just helping the hunters be aware of how dry it was, that it was stage 1 fire restrictions, and what that means as far as their campfires go. The dragging chains is a big one, and then the ammunition. Having that all come together in your messaging for the hunters helps to just raise their own awareness. And hunters are really pretty good about that kind of thing. They want to do right, and so they're pretty easy to work with. But you know, it's the South, right? And the South and football, college football in particular, I mean, that's like a religion. And so we took Smokey to Clemson University for one of the games down there, and it went over like hotcakes. So unfortunately, the video is not going to play for me, but Smokey was very well received in Clemson, and everyone was happy he was out there with the wildfire prevention message, because they knew how dry their state was. So this spring, the team went up to the Plumas National Forest, and it was the first assignment after COVID, and they wanted boots on the ground because they were experiencing fuel conditions that were 2 months in advance of normal. And they were a little on the nervous side, and rightfully so. So it was all about raising the awareness of just how incredibly dry it is and how to avoid any kind of human-caused wildfires. In particular, they were in stage 1, hoping to go into stage 2, but the indicators weren't there just yet, so they couldn't say no campfires. But we got out that message, and then the recreational shooting was an issue, but then the roadside starts was a really big one because there's lots of campers, lots of boating, lots of trailers. So we did a bunch with their social media. We got a lot of videos put together where we interviewed the FMO. He talked about the conditions. Again, we've got California State Highway Patrol to do the roadside starts. We got the local county sheriff to do the ready, set, go message. And he did that in 2 different videos. And he was terrific because he drew from personal experience. So his in-laws had lost their home in the campfire, which was in Paradise, just on the west side of the forest. And he was telling folks, just plan for it. It's not when, it's not if, it's when. So just be prepared to go. And considering what happened with the Dixie fire, yeah, he was spot on. So we got out there early with that messaging. Oh, here we go. It's going to play for us. So that particular video received the most interaction and shares. They had a very close network up there, and so yeah, they loved that one. So the other strategy that we had for reaching out to the community was doing a physical trap line. The forest had several large fires, including the North Complex the year before. So we just grabbed a bunch of their sandwich boards. We took one of our graphics, modified it for the Plumas, blew it up, enlarged it to 8. It was 4x4, and we've had these printed on a corrugated plastic, and we just plastered them everywhere, along with some other flyers that we put out. So that was our physical trap line, and that's why we ended up driving the 10,000 miles. In addition to that, we put together an electronic trap line that targeted the Pacific Crest Trail, so we could notify them, because that trail traversed the whole forest from north to south. And then they have most of their campgrounds under concessionaire, and that was great because we could send whatever we wanted posted to the coordinator, and then they could cascade that down to all of their campground hosts who had computers and printers, and they were able to print it and post it right there for us. We got the volunteer fire departments all yarded up, and we could send them notifications along with, the media, local stakeholders. We built out these electronic trap lines. We started doing that in 2020 with COVID, and we found that these things are amazing. So they really help you segment your audience and target your message specifically. The other thing we did was pretty typical prevention work, and that's participate in high-profile events. So it was the 4th of July weekend we were there, and we hit a couple different rodeo parades, one in Taylorville and one in LaPorte. And then we had a team that was over in the Beckworth side of the forest. Jimmy Turner, I think many of you are familiar with him. He is a cartoonist. So they just sat outside this ice cream area and drew cartoons and talked with lots of people. And so it was great, and people loved it, and we got tons of material handed out. The gals that went up to the Taylorville rodeo, they gave the koozies with the information on how to extinguish your campfire, the ones that you get from the Symbols Cache. They gave that to the stand that was distributing drinks, and so in the rodeo area was running around with these smoky koozies on their drinks. So very high profile, and it worked out well. Then after that, we ended up in the Boise National Forest. And this was an interesting assignment too, because they were just trying to raise awareness. They were just going into stage 1. They don't hardly ever go into stage 2. They have a lot of new people coming into the state, and they have a huge college population where these kids are really wanting to be part of that outdoors life. It's part of the whole image of that hipster thing going on. So it was an interesting delegation of authority too, because it was just identify partners and generate ideas. And so anyway, my team just went ballistic, and we went beyond identification, and we actually went to implementation. Cindy did our social media, and she created roughly 250, I think, social media memes, and it covered everything from hunting to campfires to ATVs, roadside starts, Christmas trees. I mean, we loaded them up, and it was not just for this season, but we gave them enough information that they're good to go for the whole year. And then we even put together a little calendar of suggested posts along with the social media memes, so that if they're pinched for time or like a lot of places we're finding, there's so many vacancies and somebody's just kind of getting delegated this as another duty. They could just pull up this document and it's essentially a copy paste post kind of thing, simple. So that was well received. The other thing, when we were looking at these college students, there's at least 3 colleges in the area that have very aggressive outdoor type programs. And so we looked at how can we reach that Generation Z. And, you know, one of the things is their primary social media channel is not Facebook, it's Instagram. And then, you know, it's all about the look. You know, it's not so much about the skills, it's about wearing the right clothes and having the right look. And so one of the concepts was complete your look with a bucket and a shovel so that you can put that fire out after you're done. But then, you know, we did discover too that there was an NGO that the forest had worked with, and so it would be great if they could partner up. So we put together this proposal for how to reach out to Gen Z. And then in the delegation of authority, you know, they were like looking at different partners, and one of the partners was Idaho Power, and it was like, okay, what do you want to do with that? So I'm talking to the FMO and I'm like, what is your desired outcome for working with Idaho Power? Is there an issue you're trying to resolve? He's like, no, I think we got a good relationship there. So I'm like, okay. Well, can I talk to your special use permit person who administers the contract? No, that position's vacant. Okay. So it did turn out that the gal we were working with had detailed into that position earlier. And so we followed up with her. She ended up having a contact with Idaho Power. I got a hold of him, and he was all over the idea of doing a joint PSA, talking about the transmission lines going over national forest land. And he fast-tracked it through his company, and within a couple of days, he had his one of the bosses, I'm spacing out his name, who's head of engineering and construction, a vice president, that was it, a vice president, ready to roll and be on camera. So we were able to put together this video, which was pretty amazing. That doesn't look, nope, that's not the right one. So unfortunately, I can't show that one to you. But yeah, it went over great. And we met the objective of the forest. And yeah, it worked out. Actually, wait a second. Let's go back. I think Rhonda uses a lot of the same B-roll. So let's try this again.
Hey, Linda, I'm sorry to interrupt, but your audio is not working on your video.
Oh,
Would it be
Okay.
possible to post a link to it in the chat?
Yeah, I can do that after after we close out the
Okay.
PowerPoint.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you.
Yeah, so like I said, that video went well, and yeah, make it available for you. And it was great. We wouldn't have gotten that done had we not had that contact with Idaho Power, because he was the one who thought it was a great idea, and he made it happen on his end. So that worked out great. But to wrap this up, I think having these virtual teams that have a combination of people working virtually and some folks working on the ground, I think that's the wave of the future. It adds so much flexibility to what we can do. It's a huge cost savings. It's a better work-life balance for our folks. And the team cohesion and composition, that is such a critical element of any team. But I think it's more critical when you're working with a virtual team, because you have to build those relationships over the ether. And it's nice if you have those relationships already built, but that's not always the case. And people who are willing to give it a little extra effort and communicate, that works out great. And then even though, most of us are looking to raise that public awareness and to prevent unwanted human-caused wildfires, it's the craziness that makes it fun. And more of the people that are bringing this in are saying, we're so short-staffed. We had no idea what you could do. And they're thrilled at what caliber of expertise we can bring and how we can just really help them get over a critical time. So with that, we'll go to questions, and I will go ahead and get out of this PowerPoint and stop sharing my that video.
Okay, thank you so much, Linda. That was a great presentation. We did have a couple questions come through the chat. First of all, there were a couple of questions. Could you elaborate on the electronic trap line? I think that was a method that some people weren't familiar with.
Yeah, so what we do is, we're working in Google, and we have a G drive. And so what we'll do is really start identifying who has skin in the game, essentially. And we'll look up all of the Chamber of Commerce's, the sheriff departments, the volunteer fire departments, retailers, and we'll start clumping them in a group inside of the contacts in our Google Drive. And then you can just go to that group and send out whatever you want to send out to them directly. It helps to make a phone call first, introduce yourself, let them know what you're doing, so that when it shows up in their inbox, they're not thinking, oh, this is spam, and just delete it. But yeah, one of the groups that we found to be really beneficial was the RV rental. We met this guy with Wonder Van in Boise, and he just was like, yeah, send me everything you got, and we'll put it onto our social media as well. And that was great. And then the other good area was the RV rentals and RV storage, because they're the ones coming out, getting their RV out of storage, and the messaging there is, make sure your tires are in good shape and they're properly inflated. And so, yeah, it's pretty slick. Yeah, and it saves you a lot of running and gunning. You just got to be on the phone. I can't hear you.
So a couple more questions since we have about 5 minutes left here. Another question reads, are more fire prevention education team requests coming through for more virtual only teams, on the ground teams, or take whatever's available?
I don't think they're coming through suggesting or requesting that. Usually the request comes in, they want a team, and then if I get notified that I'm going to be up and get assigned that, the first thing is to talk to that FMO and find out what the scope of work is. And most of them, like I said, have never worked with a prevention team, so that it's all brand new to them. They don't know what to expect. And so that's part of my job, is to manage those expectations. This is what we can do for you. This is what we can't do for you. If the scope of work of what they want requires boots on the ground, like the plumas, then we'll get people who are really good with dealing with the public and don't burn out after a couple days of talking with thousands of people. So the Bean Blossoms, I don't know if you're familiar with them, they're out of North Carolina. They are amazing. Go forever talking to people. So those are the kind of skills that you look for, and you just put together your team to make that happen. But yeah, it really comes down to that initial conversation with the FMO and you talking about, what do you want this next 2 weeks to accomplish for you?
Okay, excellent. Thank you. Before we ask our next question, we are going to launch a poll really quick for our attendees. And get that poll up, just asking, how much have you increased your virtual wildfire prevention messages since the pandemic? So we'll let all our attendees just take a couple quick seconds to submit their answers on that. And then our next question was, let me find it here. When you did the electronic trap line in California, who actually printed and posted the posters? And did you trust them, or did you have a means of verifying when they were in place?
We didn't follow up a lot because there just wasn't the opportunity to follow up. But it just depended on who you sent it to. So, the campground concessionaires, they loved getting that information, and they were responsible for printing it up and posting it, and they did. Because we were able to drive through a bunch of those areas and see that. But, as far as the volunteer fire department, it really gets down to the chief or their duty officer, whether or not they're going to print that. We did talk to a lot of them. They had access to plotters, many of them, and they were able to print out and and post things outside of their station. And I think it really helped with some of the teams that came in, because even before we finished up our 2-week assignment, the Beckworth complex had already broken out, and we were already sharing our electronic trap lines and our physical trap lines with them. And I'm sure they then passed that on to the folks with the Dixie Fire. So, but yeah, we got that initial network up and running, and then I'm sure it's been fine-tuned since we left with all of the activity they've had.
We've had several questions come through just asking if you could provide links to the videos that you showed in your presentation. If we could drop those into the chat box. Actually,
how about if I email those to, let me figure out how to do that, because those are large files, and maybe if there's like a place I can drop them in, I could do that. So
how about in the lobby chat? Instead of using the chat for this particular studio room, there's the main lobby chat. You could drop them in there probably. Yeah.
Okay, great.
Yeah. Thanks so much. That way everybody can have access to it.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you so much. I think we are out of questions. So thank you so much, Linda. That was a great presentation and a great way to start off our day today.
Well, thank you. I appreciate you making the effort to let me do it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right. Well, thanks so much, Linda. Have a great rest of your day.
You too. Bye.
And for the attendees, we will see you in the next session.
Okay.